What would you do if the project that you spent years building went live without your permission? No pre order runway, no coordinated launch, no green light from you, just surprise, your book is out. Well, that is the question that we are exploring today because writing a book is one thing, but navigating publishing and the proposals and the contests and the agent queries and contracts and the pivots, that's an entirely different journey. And when everything that you've carefully planned gets pulled out of your hands, the real question becomes how do you stay grounded, connected, and self led when your professional world feels a little out of control? Today, I'm joined by Stacy Rocklein, relationship mentor, marriage advocate, and now published author of Forgive Without an Apology, whose launch story took an unexpected turn when her published book live without her consent. Stacy wrote this book from a successful digital course. She did everything right and she got a plot twist. Instead of collapsing, though, she led because her work has always been about something bigger, eradicating loneliness by helping women build, sustain, and repair and nourish long term partnerships. She has helped hundreds of women heal relational trauma, including the quiet kind that happens in those good enough marriages that are just left on autopilot. She has been married nearly 30 years with three active boys. Teach me your ways, Stacy. She understands the tension between ambition and intimacy and how quickly disconnection can snowball when life gets really busy. This episode isn't just about publishing, it's about leadership under pressure, ambition without losing your marriage, and building something meaningful without sacrificing connection. So, Stacy, welcome to the Communication Queen podcast.
Wow, that is incredible. What an amazing introduction. That's just, I'm going to ride that high for a few days.
Yes, goals. So my first question to start off is like, why the book? Why now? What was that impetus to say, you know what, this successful digital course needs to be turned into a book?
Yeah, well, first backing up before the digital course itself, I experienced the biggest failure that I had ever experienced. And that is sort of what led to the content of the book that was the digital course originally. Coaching is my third career. So I was a math teacher and then I was a stay at home mom. And then I decided to be a coach. And I am a high achiever. So I just thought, you just work hard, right? And if something doesn't work, you just work hard and you try the next thing and you pivot and you do the next thing. And when that failure, I just couldn't get my coaching business off the ground in the timeline that I expected and the success that I expected and the formula of work hard, pivot, succeed. Like, why was that not working for me? And why was I taking it so hard? I mean, I was kind of devastated. And so I stopped and just asked myself, like, why does this hurt so much? And figured out that these things look the same from the outside, but they're not on the inside. All of that time that I had been working hard, pivoting, inside was a frenzy, kind of like a desperation to succeed. And that
Mm.
just goes all the way back to why we pick up our high achieving habits in the first place and how we used achievement to make ourselves worthy. And I let myself sit with this failure and really like be in it and the feelings of it and start to examine where all of that was coming from, and that is how the content of the book came to be into this digital course. And like I said, on the outside, I'm still driving myself and pivoting and working for success. But inside, it feels calm because it's not to prove worthiness anymore. It's because I want to have an impact. And a book is great when you go from like one-on-one coaching to a course where you're digital groups, and then the book is like a bigger audience. So from a practical purpose, the book I hope will have a bigger impact. And then from more of a like, you know how you have that dream in your heart that you had when you were a little kid that you're just like,
Yeah.
I was always supposed to write a book, or someone who's supposed to travel or be a mom or whatever. That pulls you forward in another way. So that's sort of how I ended up here.
I think you touched on one of the most important conversations that I think needs to be had more in the female coaching space. And it is that energy of proving that at the external pressures of achieving X by Y and the challenges that we have with our desire and our need to fit into those boxes or those molds, especially when we see other people succeeding beyond us and we're like, why not me? I know I certainly can relate to that because when I started my coaching business in 2016, I was doing it while also having a brand new newborn baby and my first one. And I was comparing my successful coaches who had all the time in the world to just like implement. And there I was implementing and breastfeeding. So I think that's one of the challenges that I too faced in the beginning of my coaching business was comparison to these external expectations of like the milestones that I thought I should be at by a certain time frame versus really truly looking at the longevity of like if this is a 30, 40, 50-year career that I desire to have, how can I structure my business in a way that builds that sustainability instead of those flash catty screenshot wins?
Totally, totally. And I feel like, especially for high achievers, we also almost make it worse because someone says, okay, it's going to take you about 5 years to like get your business to this certain point. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm going to like cut that in half, right? I work really hard. I've always been successful, but, you know, we almost, like, double set ourselves up for a fall, and I also think something for people who, are building a career that's a 2nd or 3rd career, you know, coming out of education, I think this
Mm.
is the difference between a .edu mentality and a .com mentality. .edu, clients are coming every day when the bell rings, right? .com is very different, and so you have to learn a different mindset too. And then another thing that happens, which I think is really unfortunate, is that when you pull yourself out of professional work for an extended period of time, even if it's, like, mindfully chosen by you and your partner and you loved those years and it was so exciting, I felt, and I've heard many people report the same, that you lose a little bit of confidence in yourself because you've been out of that professional setting, and so that is also another difficult thing to overcome when you're coming in on a 3rd career or 2nd career, so, it's kind of like a perfect storm for me.
Oh my goodness. And I totally think motherhood and being a stay-at-home mom, that is a third career.
Totally.
That is a second career. That is a full-time, all hands on deck, keep them alive, oh my God, career. And I think one of the great things that I love that you touched on expectation because I think a lot of authors, when they write their first book, they have a lot of expectations around what that book is supposed to be, what that is supposed to mean, what that's going to do for them. What were your expectations and how did you navigate those, especially through the healing process that you already went through with healing your relationship with your coaching business?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits that, or at least I guess I just heard the lesson at the right time, was that someone said somewhere, "You're never gonna make a dime off your book." Like, don't expect that to be a source of income for you. Expect to position it in a way that it's going to help you create more impact, more audience. It's going to be a tool that works for you, not gonna be like this big grand, you're gonna be the best-selling author and, land on an island somewhere in your perfect little house. That framing helped me a lot because I've always kind of seen it having that purpose, and I think that that helped coming out since it was a digital course, I sort of saw it as an extension. But yeah, I think you're totally right. We have these, especially our first book, right? We have these huge expectations of what we want for it, and they aren't realistic, and they're a lot of work to get there, and so it was helpful. I can't even remember where I heard that, but it was helpful for me to hear that early to temper my expectations of what was gonna happen with it.
I think that's the biggest thing that's the paradigm shift for most authors is really looking at how is this a authority positioning tool and how can you leverage this like a podcast, like your social platforms as a high value positioning tool that supports the other things that you sell downstream.
Yeah.
It can be a strong strategic business decision, but it's not necessarily like the thing. And so I'm so glad that a friend point that out to you because a lot of authors that I speak to, they have this expectation of like, I'm going to sell thousands of copies. And I'm like, yes, you may, but for the most part, you're selling thousands of copies on a $15 product. That's still dozens of dollars. You're not rolling in it. But you can leverage that book as having assets beyond it, like your course, like your coaching, like affiliate partnerships. There's many other ways to use it as a tool that serve and support. With the topic specifically about forgiveness without an apology, what caused you to choose the title and the theme of the book? I mean, I know it came from a successful digital course. How did you make it so that the book differentiates itself from the course and kind of leads people into the other offers that you provide?
Yeah, I for this book, I wanna redefine forgiveness, and I think there's a lot of I mean, it's just a charged word, and I was raised Catholic, so it's got, like, its own connotations for what that means for me, for other people coming out of, faith-based, systems. It's a loaded word, and so I wanted to redefine it for people as a practice that is, like, multifaceted. Yes, it's looking back at things that have hurt and being able to let go of that, but it's also, like, those things created defense mechanisms that get in the way of our relationships. And those things created limiting beliefs that get in the way of our, success and living the lives that we want. So if you take forgiveness as a process and a discipline and a way to self evaluate, like you always say, how something was working for you. Like that's the idea, right? Is to repurpose these things that happen in a way that empowers you to move forward changed, grown from the experience. So that's why I chose to go that direction. And I specifically put in there without an apology because people get really stuck there. And understandably so. Like, you deserve an apology, hands down. Like, someone did you dirty. And we want that. But we can get very stuck in that spot. And that's not benefiting the other person. That's just harming us. So, that's sort of how I went that direction with the title and the theme of it. And also, if you're going to write a book, get on Amazon and get your keywords out and make sure it's going to get found in a search. And so you want to make sure that in the title and the subtitle, you get those things that are going to help people find exactly the work we do.
And how does your book position you for more downstream sales in your business?
Yes. Yes, perfect. Well, my intention next is to I'm starting to build on Substack. And so one of my great loves and successes have been building communities. I love getting into community. I love getting women especially into community. I love growing groups and leading groups. And so my offerings, I'm at the point where I can't keep working one to one. I have to
Mhm.
be thinking group to one always. So all of my offerings coming down the way are the work of forgiveness is what I like the root of it really is we have to train ourselves to be vulnerable. We have to like grow our ability to be vulnerable. When we can be vulnerable, with ourselves first so that we're safe in any space. Then we can also pick the right people to be vulnerable with. And then all of a sudden you have rich, meaningful, deep relationships. And we don't learn these things. Like we have to go develop them in community. So this book is sort of like your first step on the way to developing that vulnerability, which I hope will be the next book actually. And I intend to, invite people who start here to continue in community.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I encourage authors to do is to build a community around the basis of your book, around the
Yeah.
foundations, even prior to launching as well. Like have the community, let them be your pre-readers, let them tell you what's landing, what's not landing, what you maybe they want more expansion on, more understanding on. And I think that the fact that building a community is a gigantic skill set for you, like that's not something that everybody comes by easily. So congratulations for you for being able to see that, recognize that, and have that also be a part of your overarching strategy to lead people from the book into the community that allows for sustainability, which
Yeah, yeah, and even someone who's like, "I don't know if I can build community or not," like, you can. You start with your email list. That is a community, that's
Mhm.
like I consider that my email family. Those are the people you reach out to and ask them to be early readers and give you feedback, and you don't have to have some elaborate system to go out and start creating a family there, so anyone can start a community.
love that. Yes, I think that that's the whole tripping over the how. When people trip over the how, like, well, I don't know where to start. I'm like, start in your own backyard. Like, I just started a local mompreneur meetup simply because I wanted moms that I could have play dates with that also I could talk business with.
Oh, I wish I
And
lived by you.
it's great because we all meet up once a month and it's not too big of a commitment, but for one, it positions me as a leader in my community. It also has brought me clients. It's also allowed me to have play dates with amazing moms and that I can talk business with, not just, I don't cook or clean. I don't really know how to do those things. I'm as my husband lovingly said, I am domestically untrained. I was not equipped with those skill sets growing up. But I do know what my skill set is, and I do have a skill set with business and marketing. And so being able to say, like, I can see stories and I can see challenges, and it's so cool to be able to build that community. And it all starts with leadership. It sounds to me like if you don't have it, build it and be the leader for it.
Totally.
And you've done that with your book. When it comes to marketing the book, what's been your biggest bottleneck?
Oh, man. So, yeah, I was hurled into marketing, unexpectedly, just timeline unexpectedly.
Mhm.
I had the whole plan, right? The pre-order and I had this all laid out and
Oh,
what
high
was going to
achiever.
happen. What's that?
The high achiever. Of
Yeah,
course
right. I was going to
you
do
had the
it by the
plan.
book. Totally, totally. So the biggest challenge for me honestly has been playing a little bit of catch up but this is what happens in any launch. If you've ever launched a product, everybody knows like stuff goes wrong, you gotta slash this, adjust this. Like it's not that different. This is my baby. So it felt closer than like a different funnel that I had created before. So
Mhm.
the biggest marketing thing has probably been adapting and growing the audience for the book. Now, in some ways, having it launched without my permission sped things up, right? I had no time for imposter syndrome. Like, I don't have to coordinate calendars with any podcast. It's like, no, the book's out. Like, I'm available whenever. There's, you know, silver linings in it for sure. And maybe you can answer this question. Here I am. This is one of my methods of trying to get an audience for the book is to reach out to podcasts and
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, your book is such an epic resource for doing that. It's incredible. What are other I think that's the question for anybody in my situation who doesn't have your kind of expertise in marketing. What are the best ways to continue to grow that audience for that book?
So what I would look at is strategically who is the book specifically for, and
Mhm.
how we think of a podcast guesting strategy is we call it our AAA strategy. So we look at where are you an authority? Like, what is an authority that you like? That's your niche. That's who you speak to. Sometimes conversions will come from that. Sometimes that will be you going on, maybe forgiveness podcasts or maybe podcasts around relationships with other relational coaches. Not necessarily do those necessarily bring in the dollars because you're speaking to an established audience and you're basically validating the other coaches claims and you're there and they're where you're basically giving backup to what they say most likely, unless you come in with like some out of the blue polarizing perspective that's very different. For the most part, you're going to be saying what they say in just a different way. But then we have your angle strategy of like who are those specific people that you're targeting of, the clients that maybe they're seeing a relationship coach or maybe they're with a therapist and you do relationship coaching but you don't do relationship therapy. And so then you may have some cross pollination where you may be able to support, and you have a similar avatar, but you're not competing in the same industry. And then we have your angle podcast of what are all those unique pieces of your own story, being a boy mom, being married for 30 years, being a stay at home mom. Like those are all unique aspects to your story that will give you more of a blue ocean for the podcast that you could be going on. And you can just simply Google stay at home mom podcasts and then submit for all of those podcasts that are a fit, because your story is never going to be a saturated market. So when you speak from your story and your lived experience, everybody who's been a relationship coach may have a similar tip or advice, but they definitely don't have your story, and thus they're not going to have your resonance, and they're not going to be able to reach the same audience that you will because of the background that you have.
Yeah, so, like, more diversifying what kind of podcast to approach, right?
For sure.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
such
And
good advice.
thank you. Thank you. It's all in the book.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, like, anybody who's listening, if you wanna get on a podcast, every single thing you need is in that book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very comprehensive resource, and that's why I wrote it, was because I knew that what we were teaching, what we were doing for our consulting clients, not everybody is at that level where they want to invest in an agency or to do the work with them to build out the systems. So I literally give it so that you can do it for yourself. And I think with your book specifically, podcasts are one of the best ways to be getting your work out there into the world, especially for as a coach from your story. When you think of unique aspects of your story, are there other pieces other than being a stay manager and married for 30 years that are unique that can play into um, the types of podcasts that you go on? Like, I know you speak a lot on relational trauma. Like, are you comfortable speaking about traumatic experiences that maybe you've had on podcasts?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, my book is filled with, you know.
Trauma.
Yes, and, truthfully, like, I really thought when I was gonna go through the process personally of healing that I would be forgiving other people, and of course I did, but there's a lot of self-forgiveness that has to happen as you pull up a trauma that looks like it was somebody else doing it to you, that has you have your whole own part of it to take ownership of. So, there's a lot of things in the book that, I don't love that I have to write those and put those out there, but they're important. There's a whole chapter in there where I talk about being a mean girl in junior high, like, that's embarrassing, and that is not something people are waving a flag about out in the world, but, not everybody was the victim of a mean girl circle. There were mean girls there, right? I mean, it's important for us to own every single part of our background because that self forgiveness is really the only way. It's like I said, that vulnerability with yourself. You
Hmm.
have to be able to tell yourself the truth. And like that story in particular, as I share it in the book, I told myself a version of it for a long time that was like, this is why I did it. I felt that I had to. I was also struggling and then it's like, well, let's just go deeper, deeper, deeper because there's two things can be true. I felt hurt at the time. I was trying to protect myself, but also I did terrible things. Like they're both true and we have to be able to lay ourselves bare in front of ourselves in order to really forgive. So, absolutely I share trauma. I think that that is an important thing for me to model as I ask people to take the steps to do that work for sure.
Oh, I love that. And then you could go on Mean Girl podcasts. I bet
Yeah,
there's a few. I bet there.
probably.
First of all, I love the fact that you own that part of your story. I think that that's so unique, and I think that's valuable for people to hear from the Mean Girl perspective as well. Um, and that gives you such versatility in the podcast that you go on. If you go on bullying podcasts, like you could go on bullying podcasts and talk about the perspective of the villain. And that
Yeah.
offers a really valuable perspective where if just imagine if you could change the heart, Stacey, of someone who's listening to a bullying podcast, feeling like they're being bullied and they're a victim, and there's a recovered mean girl on there, and you were able to shift their perspective so that they take ownership of their circumstances as you've taken ownership and everybody rises and takes ownership and becomes the creators of their reality, oh my gosh, we could change the world.
I know. Totally. I think it's especially important when it comes to parenting. We're all gonna hope we improve on how we were parented. I think that's the natural hope for a parent, and we're gonna completely screw it up because that's the nature of parenting. Like, we're gonna make mistakes, and those feel like the most devastating mistakes because the stakes are so high when it comes these are our most precious beloved beings, you know? And so if we don't have a way to do self-forgiveness, we will just be crippled as parents. And so, like, that's to me, it's been the biggest value is to help me tenderly care for myself through the process of harming people I care about.
Oh, preach. Because parenting is not easy by any means. And, there's the litany, and I speak a lot on like traumas I experienced as a child and whatnot with growing up with an alcoholic for a dad. But those experiences, I also got so much compassion when I became a parent for him. And like I had other resources in order to navigate frustrating child things. And the only resource he had was alcohol. And so it gave me so much perspective for his experience once I became a parent. I do think it's a very initiatory experience that gives a lot of
Totally.
forgiveness and compassion and a lot
Totally.
of grace that comes with it. When you think of what's next, because I know you mentioned you have the second book coming up, you're already on for that, you're building the community. What do you think you would do differently with getting the book out there and the marketing strategy in advance?
Hmm. That's such a good question. Well, I know more things now. Like I said before, like one of my favorite things that you sort of, you know, one of your values is that things are happening for us. And I really believe that. And I think that my book and the work I'd done to create that book helped me a lot along the way when I hit setbacks or, when things happened that I couldn't plan. You can feel it in your nervous system when you're like,
Mhm.
I'm frustrated, but I'm not going to get stopped here. And it's not about me and it's not my worthiness. I'm going to keep moving forward. Something I did well, I think, is I always had a plan B. So I would be like, okay, I'm going to submit for a contest. If I don't get that, I'm going to go query book agents. If I don't get that, I'm going to go look into other forms of publishing. So I would recommend people always have a plan B. Like, if you know that your book needs to be taken all the way to publication and marketing, you have to get it there however you need to get it there. I chose hybrid publishing. What I didn't know about hybrid publishing was that I kind of think about it for anybody who doesn't know what that means. I think about it like a contractor's going to be in charge of your remodel and they're going to get you all of the support and you're going to have a project manager that gets you the cover art and the whatever editing and whatnot. I guess I just assumed they were gonna hold my hand a little more. I you know, I had to do the most of all of the editing and, like, even catching commas, like, at the end of a sentence. I'm like, how is that on me?" But you have to be way more involved than, you think you're gonna be if you pick hybrid publishing. I would still do it, I think. Well, maybe I would do self-publishing now that I kinda know the different pieces. So I might have picked a different publishing route. People told me this all along, and I know it's true, but I still was unprepared for nobody is going to be marketing this book except you.
Mhm.
Nobody is. I even talked to somebody who won the Hay House contest, is a Hay House author, and she was like, "No, they're not doing anything." Like, the marketing is I mean, that's like, I don't know, I'm gonna make up a number, 2/3 of the work, whatever. I mean, the book is hard to write and you get it to the end, and that's so exciting, but, like, you're just getting started. The marketing is huge. I would have built out my plan ahead of time so that when it was published without my consent, I I could have mobilized more quickly. I would have spent, like, longer runway developing relationships with podcasters, with just other thought leaders that were adjacent or um in my genre or, you know, niche. What else? I mean, those are some of the big ones I'm thinking of that I would for the second book that I will do differently. Like, now I know if you're gonna write books, and I just listened to a podcast that you said you're gonna write 13 in the next 13 years, so
Yeah, so
you're
far
on it.
we're 2 for 13.
Awesome. So, like, relationship building, it just never ends. It's not like this book's over and then I'm gonna market. You have to constantly market.
Mhm.
Relationship development is just it's just a thing you do every day from now on if you're gonna be a writer. And so that has been a perspective shift that has been really helpful for me.
I would say if you're gonna be in business for the
Yeah, you're right.
like,
Totally true.
it biz dev is relationship development and getting into new rooms and meeting new people. I remember later on in the book, there's, an opening of a chapter where I talk about how I was, like, just not good at with relationships. I didn't speak for 6 months when I was a kid, and my mom said, "Go up to 10 people every day and say hi." Well, that served me powerfully throughout school, throughout business, throughout multiple different iterations of businesses, was just learning that it is a practice and a discipline to build those relationships, especially building high caliber relationships where there's visibility and proximity and you can ask for those favors down the road with enough relational equity. But there has to be a relation and has to be grounded in giving. It can't be from
Absolutely.
a space of being a taker and what can you do for me because people smell that energy from a mile away. And it's like the guy at the bar who's like trying to get into bed with the first woman available. It's
Mhm.
not cute. So I love that like, yes, yes to your whole new plan on the next one on being able to build up that relational equity. And I think the thing is a lot of times when the book comes out and it drops and suddenly it's like, there's sales, but there's not the consistency of sales from the months of planning of podcasts in advance. It doesn't mean you're behind though. It just means that you got some runway to build as you're running it.
To
But and that's what you're doing now, going on podcasts and sharing about the book, sharing about the transformation that it provides, giving the tools, giving support, giving resources, and then allowing for that and sharing vulnerably and openly, which you do expertly well. Um, that
Thanks.
all of that builds. And so just because your book is out there doesn't mean like it only stops marketing if you decide to stop marketing it.
Totally. Totally. No, absolutely. It's just an ongoing thing. It's been such an amazing learning experience. I mean, just the absolute it's just been incredible.
Do you think you'd self-publish the next one?
Maybe because I think the hybrid publishing, I wanted really strong developmental editing because I wanted it to be a good book, like I
Yeah.
wanted it to be strong writing. They helped with cover art. And then, like, all the little details of publishing, which I don't actually think are that difficult, like ISBNs and stuff like that. Once you've done some things on KDP, like, you kind of you realize it's not terribly hard. So I think I probably could do it on my own.
Mhm.
I've got enough of a team around me that I think that I could kinda, like, farm those things out. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm frustrated still in the communication with the company I'm working with, but that has been also really good for me because, I'm having to have some hard conversations and advocate for myself, and so, I mean, nothing but great lessons.
I've had a lot of authors say that their book writing journey, book publishing journey, like putting it out there for the world to see in print, is very much like cyclical to experiences that they had or whatever they wrote the book about, whether it was relationships or marriage or travel or like there's certain lessons that the universe kind of pops in, but it's just in a different form and it's in the form of publishing. Did you notice that same similarity where
Oh,
like, oh,
totally,
I'm
and
holding a boundary again?
it's true. I even heard this. I heard a published author say one time, like, something like that, and it was kind of like, the experience that you go through as you're writing the book is like the book, like it just keeps happening. So you write the book and then you get your next level of lessons. And then you're like, oh, that's the next book. And you just kind of, it just keeps going. Everything I wrote in the book, I needed for this process so that I could keep moving myself and not get stuck and be, you know, devastated and angry and not able to move forward. I didn't have time to do that. So, and in the process of talking about the book and really leaning into vulnerability, it's leading me right into the next book. So I hope that one will be about emotional intimacy and how to build that and how to nurture and, cultivate your vulnerability.
Oh, and I mean, your title is so dang good. So, for all of those listening, head on over to stacyrocklein.com. That's Stacy, Rocklein.com, and get the book Forgive Without an Apology: How to Heal, Set Boundaries, and Create Deeper Connections. Because it sounds like you're doing that through now the relationships that you're building with going on podcasts, with showing up with your marketing strategy. So kudos to you.
Thank
Anything else
you.
that you want to leave our listeners with before we head off?
I did read the book. I did my first Audible, so if you were able to tolerate my voice, you'll be able to tolerate that, which is
Yes.
another fun thing. But I think what I would say is, and if you listen regularly to the podcast here, you know that this is something that Kim really drives forward is this vulnerability. The more you can be vulnerable with yourself, with the people you're in relationship with, the deeper your relationships are going to be. And loneliness is such a pervasive like thing that people are experiencing right now. And it's not about the amount of people you get into your life. It really comes down to that ability to start first with yourself and be able to tell yourself the truth and forgive yourself, and then to be able to do that same stuff with other people. So lean into it. It's the way forward.
Hey, lean into sharing those vulnerable stories because they are some of your greatest assets, and they attract some of your greatest clients, customers, friendships, relationships that you get to have. As always, my fellow sovereigns, let your voice be heard. There is someone out there where your story can save at least one life. So go out there and be bold in sharing it. Until next time, Communication Queens, we will see you here on the Communication Queen podcast.
Thank you so much for listening. If you love this episode, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. For more tips on guest podcasting, storytelling, and communication strategies, follow us on social media at Communication Queens Agency and visit us at communicationqueens.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And in the meantime, remember, your story has the power to save one life. Let your story and your voice be heard.